Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cybersecurity Sauna. Thanks for joining us for another session where we sweat out the hot topics in security. So welcome to all our listeners, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at #CyberSound. Cybersecurity is relevant for everyone. Not everyone realizes it, however, and not everyone understands what those in the InfoSec industry take for granted. So how should security-minded individuals communicate with friends, relatives, colleagues, and the general public about this important topic? What are the misconceptions regular folks often have about InfoSec, and what could we in the industry be doing better? Here with me in the studio is Laura Kankaala, security consultant at F-Secure. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
Laura, you host a kick-ass podcast called We Need to Talk About InfoSec, so you talk about InfoSec quite a lot.
Thank you, yes.
In your experience, what does InfoSec mean for Joe Average?
Well, I think it means multiple things, but first of all, I think if we take a person who does not work with computers or they have a day job doing something separate from computers, they may use a computer as, a part of their job, but it's not their job to investigate the computer, like how to do things wrong, or they are not coders or stuff like that. So for them, I feel that InfoSec is kind of like, it's, like how to keep my accounts secure and how to keep hackers from hacking into my accounts and stuff like that. And then maybe if they have IoT devices, they are concerned about those. Like, okay, what if someone is looking at me through my, surveillance camera? So, yeah, but I think it's kind of like this abstract thing,
A little bit vague, like I don't even know how hackers operate, but I'm worried about them.
Yeah, kind of like you have these things that you use on a daily basis, but you're not actually sure how they operate. Like you use, let's say, social media services. So you log into Facebook and you see that it works. You see that your friends are online. But what happens beyond that? Like it's a kind of like a black box of something going on behind the curtains. So I think that also brings into the picture the kind of vision of a hacker who can do basically anything so that they can, hack into your account just by looking at your phone.
But it seems to me like the average person doesn't really care that much about what happens in that black box. So is part of the mystique of a hacker the fact that they sort of understand something that I'm not even remotely interested in?
Yeah, well, when it comes to, a person who uses these kind of services but do not work necessarily as a coder or a hacker, I think for them, they are interested in how their data is being handled, for example, or how, you're using your phone and then like the phone is obviously communicating somewhere else. Like how do these communications work? But I also think that maybe people start to care about their privacy and about what's the status of their own security when they get hacked. So for example, I get a lot of questions about, can I hack into a hacked Instagram account and these sort of things. So I hate to be the person who goes there and says like, well, you should have used MFA or you should have used multi-factor authentication.
Like after the fact?
Yes, because that's not really helpful. But in a case of, let's say that your Instagram has been hacked or your Facebook or any of these services has been hacked, as a hacker, the easiest way for me to hack a person would be that I send them a phishing email trying to, get their credentials by forcing them into, a login page that is actually controlled by me. But if the user doesn't know their password, then it's hard to do it that way. And then I've gotten a lot of questions, well, why can't you just hack Instagram? Why can't you just hack Facebook? And that's not really something that, for one, that I want to do or I can do legally. And also, on the other hand, if it was so easy to hack into this, Instagram and Facebook and services like this, then I think we would really live in a very terrifying world if I could just basically, someone contacts me and then on that instant I could just basically, hack into Instagram.
That's more polite than just saying, because hacking doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have maybe a tiny bit of misconceptions on, especially like if you have a case of hacked, accounts or a case of lost credentials. So it's hard to, basically what you could do is brute force the login page or try to see if the user has been part of some other breach where their password has been leaked and see if that works. But these things are, it's not really doable. So what I typically just tell the people that come to me and ask these things is that, you just basically need to contact Instagram or Facebook and try to recover your account.
Yeah. But it would be ideal if people didn't have to get hacked before they get interested in information security. So what do you feel when you hear a person say that they don't care about InfoSec?
I hear that a lot less nowadays than I used to. I think the public mentality of InfoSec and, accounts being taken over, it has shifted somewhat. That's my perception of it. I don't have any statistics on this.
Or at least people have stopped saying that.
Yeah, or at least they don't ask me why should I care? Because it's also on the news all the time that, okay, this breach happened and this data was now, found to be sold on the internet. And I also think that identity thefts, for example, when it comes to, let's say these Instagram accounts being hacked or, these kind of things happening, and they are happening quite often. So the overall notion of security, it has changed. I really need to focus on this and I really need to see that my accounts are secure before something happens.
Do you think the general public understands what hacking and hackers are?
Well, yes and no. I still think that, the stock photo of a hacker sitting in a basement with
a hoodie on.
Yeah. I still think that stereotype is very much alive. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I also...
I'm not saying it's untrue.
I'm not saying it's untrue, yes. But hacking it's a profession. So
right.
No one wants to spend all of their days in a basement, in a dark, damp place hacking away when they could be sitting in here, in an office space with brightly lit rooms and, with people around you. And I think these kind of mental images, while they're not bad in that sense, but they also give this give out this very mysterious feel to the hackers, so that the hackers are basically magicians who can get into any kind of system, or it would be super easy to always hack stuff. Well, sometimes it is true that something can be hacked easily, but that is not always the case. For example, with the accounts.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like a video game, press X to hack.
Yeah.
and then people are why can't you just press your X here and hack this?
And I think in popular media, if you think about it, there's a lot of these kind of depictions of, what's the game? Have you played the Watch Dogs, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very... you just press a button and then you hack stuff. Or,
absolutely,
or any kind of video game. It depicts hacking as more a, this simple puzzle solving kind of thing.
What's your favorite way of explaining what hacking is to somebody who doesn't know?
My favorite way of explaining it would be that what you require to be a good hacker is that you need to have good sitting muscles, so that you can sit for an extended periods of time, so that whenever you're looking at something and it cannot be hacked maybe overnight, then you just need to have patience, because maybe you are the person who just put enough effort into hacking something so it can be hacked.
I've tried various similes, I think I once used the TV chef, here's one I prepared earlier. It's all about what you prepared earlier, and not so much what you can do in the moment. And I think to my more nerdy friends, I talked about how in Dungeons and Dragons the magician has to memorize spells before he can cast them, and but stuff like that. Something that sort of emphasizes that you have to do your preparations before you're at the point where you can just hack something at the snap of your finger. Sort of building the tools and that.
Yeah.
Do you have similes that you use?
I think the sitting muscles is the one that I use, because I feel that when I do hacking, as a as a part of my job, it just requires a lot of patience, not only while doing the job, but before you can kind of do the job, you need to have some basic skill level. So I think it helps if you have patience, or if you have just overall interest in computers, in coding, in building infrastructure so that you get familiar with these things. But it takes time, naturally. Like as with any trade, I would say that you don't get good at it overnight.
Yeah, I think I once said that hacking is about research. Like you do the research, and then when you've done it, you know something, and then you can sort of just deliver your knowledge whenever you want.
Yeah, and it also helps if you like know what kind of research other people are doing. So if you just follow blogs or follow Twitter and see what kind of things people are hacking, and because naturally you cannot be the one to hack everything, because the world of internet and the world of systems, it's so vast that you cannot simply be everywhere.
We in the InfoSec like to talk about different hat colors, but do you think white hat or black hat has any significance for the man on the street?
I think it does. Well, if it doesn't, I think it should, because there is a clear distinction between those. So a black hat would be a one that wants to hack something having criminal intentions in mind, so that they would want to profit out of hacking something or selling something, like selling exploits or selling people's data. But for white hat hackers, the incentives are not the same. So they would be that they want to, break something out of curiosity or break something out of making things better in the future.
But also disclosing the vulnerabilities responsibly and helping the manufacturers fix things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that they don't, for example, try to sell the vulnerabilities they find, and they
drop 0 day on Twitter.
Yeah.
How could we in the InfoSec community do a better job in communicating what this work, what information security and the work that goes into it actually is, to avoid these misconceptions? When there's a vulnerability or a malware outbreak, are we doing a good enough job in explaining what this means and what you should do?
I think that sometimes, yes, we are communicating these things really clearly and well, but sometimes, like, let's say that a breach happens, and then it's probably you can read about it on the news, and then you may get an email notifying you that your data was breached from the company that was breached. But unless this has like a direct impact to you, it can be hard to understand that, like what's the actual thing that I should be scared of. So let's say that a governmental database gets leaked online, it's not, protected enough, and then all of the citizens' information ends up being accessible to anyone online. Then even though your social security number, your home address and everything gets leaked, it may not necessarily result anything bad happening to you directly, even though if the data is being sold on the internet. So I think we should make people understand that once this is out there, it will be out there forever. We cannot, scoop back the things that were breached. We can, for example, if it was an account that was breached and your password was, breached as well, it's easy to change the password. But if your social security number was breached, it's harder to take that back unless you want to change your gender or anything like that.
But then again, what do you do in a situation like that? Like you said, you can't change these things. So the information that this leak happened, what is there to do?
If it was a password or credentials or your, let's say, credit card, then you can naturally take action and change your password. You can change your credit card. But, that's the thing, that when data that should not be available to the public eye, let's say social security number, gets leaked, what can you do? The best thing you can do at that point is to know that it was leaked somewhere.
So can you think of any examples that you've seen of really poor InfoSec communication to regular users?
Well, I think really poor communication is, for one, no communication at all.
Right.
Because the sad fact is that these breaches, they do happen, and you cannot always protect from this. But if you are a mature enough company, you should be able to communicate this to your users, just so that they know that, okay, this and this data is now basically compromised. But also, was it last year or the year before that the Equifax hack happened? Yeah. So they got basically hacked and all of their user data was leaked, or most of it at least. And they agreed to settle some money for the users whose data was lost in that. And basically they then promised to pay $100 something to the users. But not only that, but then they required the users to have some form of credit card monitoring or protection in place. Like there were these conditions like, okay, we kind of lost your data, but now we won't pay you even $100 to, compensate for that unless you have this and this in place. So I feel that these kind of, you're playing around your responsibility and not, following through. Like it's not setting a good example.
Can you think of examples of good things that have been helpful communication in case of a breach, for example?
Yeah, I think most of the notifications that I've got, they have had, exact steps what you can take or action points like, okay, go change your password or go invalidate any sessions if you have any extra sessions in your account or stuff like that. So they typically do have something of the sort, if I recall correctly. So I think a good communication would be that you do it as fast as possible and to the people who actually have been breached, and then tell them that, okay, we suspect that your account may be breached, and go change your password and enable multi-factor authentication, and that you create these or give these concrete action points for your users, what they can do next.
That's good advice. I would add that be honest. You just got caught with your pants down. Don't make it any worse.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do in this situation is be honest about what happened.
When it comes to sales, do you have these kind of I know that you go to customers and you sell our services. So do you use these things as an example? Let's say that you don't want this thing happening to you.
That depends. Some of my contact people, some of the people I meet are very aware and they understand the risk. Sometimes the case is that they're they know what the situation is, but they have to convince other people in the organization, and then it gets then it becomes political and they can't get things to move ahead. So I don't sort of have to I don't like to scare people without providing examples on how to do better. So it's not so much often that I have to convince the guy I'm sitting across the table from. It's more that we, working together with him, we have to come up with a way to convince everybody else in the organization or the people holding the purse strings.
Yeah.
So in those cases, I try to maybe come up with an example from their industry, something that this person, my contact person, could use to sort of highlight the issues and make his work easier. I think that's my job, making my contact person's work easier for him.
Yeah, so not to scare them to death.
No. The industry gets criticized for promoting FUD, so fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But where do you draw the line between FUD and informing people of the dangers of poor security?
Well, first of all, I think the things that we are dealing with, they are very severe in nature. So let's say that a company gets hacked or a person gets hacked, the implications could be really severe. But when we bring this FUD or fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the picture, that doesn't serve necessarily anyone's purpose. It only serves the purpose of maybe selling more stuff. But let's say if you are advertising hackers as these all-powerful people who can just basically, sit outside your home and with a Wi-Fi pineapple, they can just look at all of your web traffic and see what everything you're doing there without any extra effort. I don't think that it serves anyone's purpose that we are not being really realistic. I understand that anyone, a normal person or basically people who don't work with computers, they don't have to understand technicalities on how these things work, but we shouldn't tell them lies either. We shouldn't tell them something that is not actually doable or easily doable. I think that's happening less these days, but yeah, I still see it happening.
Yeah, but it's sometimes hard to draw the line. I got called a fearmonger once by a customer when I was stating something like, unless you improve the security of this and that system, like you will get hacked. And they were like, oh, you're fearmongering. I'm like, no, sir, I'm not fearmongering. I'm stating a fact, like this will happen.
Yeah, and then I think in that case, maybe it's just that the reality is quite scary sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you just need to, be real with yourself and admit the risk you're taking. Like, let's say as a company, if you're exposing too much.
How do you handle a situation if you see somebody do something that's risky security-wise, like leaving their laptop open and unattended?
I travel quite a bit, so I see constantly people in cafes, in the train, like in the plane. They leave their laptops open, or they leave basically all of their belongings there. They leave their phone there, and they leave their laptop there. So let's say that if I was, with bad intentions there, I could just take their phone, and if they haven't changed their PIN code from one of the default ones, so the 0000 or 1234 or one of these, I could just basically potentially access their social media accounts, reset their passwords, because we use our phones to log into Twitter and to Instagram and to these services. Yeah. So I think that, it tiny bit gives me the creeps whenever people do this. And once I've told a person who left their computer open in a train that, maybe you shouldn't do that. But typically, I just look at them very
a typical Finnish passive-aggressive way.
Yes.
Without saying anything, but they get the message.
They get the message, I hope.
One of my pet peeves when traveling is when people want to charge their devices and they're just looking for like a USB port anywhere. And wherever they can find a USB port, they just stick their device in. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, you don't know where it's been.
Yeah.
It's coming from that port.
Yeah.
So talking about building awareness in the workplace, are there any techniques you think are particularly good for educating employees about security?
I think that if you can do some kind of hands-on training, that's the best. Because to be honest, with all the love and care in the world, I know these people who make these trainings and the slides, and then there's the multiple options and you need to pick one, and then after you've done 1 hour of that, you have no idea what you actually did. So I think those have their time and place naturally, and you shouldn't disregard those. But for me personally, I feel that if you can do something more concrete, like more hands-on stuff, it's better. Like let's say the service that they send the phishing emails periodically to your employees, and then they, it's gamifying the phishing. But I think, those kind of things, that if you can somehow make it more concrete.
No, I agree. Phishing simulation is a great way to build employee awareness, because you get the sort of the training. It's a minute training. It takes a minute, and you get it when you need it, like when you're facing that situation. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and then other thing is that if you can somehow raise awareness by creating have a kind of like a red team exercise, but have just people come to your office and then see when your employees spot them out, and whenever they spot them, you can just basically hand out rewards to your employees who spotted the...
Yeah, like where you get a reward for challenging the guy, like, where's your ID badge? I don't know, but here's movie tickets for you.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to tackle them to the ground and stuff like that. You can just ask, like, who are you? Why are you here? Why don't you have a badge with you?
Right. We also did like an exercise where we were tailgating people, and after we got in, so walking in, like having somebody open a door for us and walking in after them, and when somebody did that and didn't sort of challenge us, we'd give them like a little flyer, like, here's a flyer, check it out when you have time. And the flyer was like, you just got tailgated, and this is how that happens, and don't let it happen again.
Yeah. And I think those things, because they are so concrete and you're participating in it.
Right.
So these things are really good. And I think in some cases, these things go longer way than just, having a PowerPoint presentation about information security.
So you mentioned like inviting everybody to the auditorium for a 2-hour session, an InfoSec info dump. Are there any other bad examples of like, this is not how you build security culture?
I think if your employees are scared of admitting that they made a mistake, like let's say that they clicked on a link they shouldn't have clicked, then you are already breeding like bad kind of culture into the workplace. So you should have open culture, like open for mistakes, because any one of us could do a mistake. I once lost my company phone and I was terrified, like what kind of a whipping am I going to get? But like then I just, instantly called our CISO and like it was fine. It turned out to be fine. Like nothing happened. And the phone was swiped remotely and everything. So typically these things are not as bad as we imagine them to be at the beginning or like at first when they happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's actually better if you actually do click on a link and if you actually do give your credentials to a shady website, that you contact someone or anyone responsible for security at your office. So yeah, I think just, having an open mind and reminding your employees that, we all make mistakes and it's okay. And you can just tell us whenever these things happen. I think that goes a long way.
Should those kind of stories be communicated within companies? Like, yes, Lisa here clicked on a link she shouldn't have, but that will happen to people.
Yeah.
But then what stopped like really bad thing from happening was that she reported it like super fast and we got in front of it and we were able to prevent anything bad from happening. So this is what you should do.
I think that, don't mention any names because then it goes to public shaming. Like, oh no, Lisa, why did you do that? It's more like, we had this case of someone clicking on the link and then we were able to react to it quickly because we had the information. So I think you should always try to protect like individual person from getting ashamed because these things, they do bring a lot of shame to us. It's like
I'm noticing even with all the positive even with all the positive things I was saying about Lisa, the thing you remembered on and clung on was that she clicked on that link in the first place.
Absolutely. And then you're like, no, like I don't want to be like her. But that's not the case. That's not the lesson you want to teach.
No.
The lesson you want to teach is that react quickly and tell someone. Because these things, even though if it was a mistake or if you did something by accident, it's still, there's a lot of stigma around this. Like you don't want to be the person who is, on the news and everywhere. Like, this person fucked up.
Yeah, and like combined with the fact that like we were talking, a lot of people don't know what they should be doing. Like I think it's pretty bad. Like you're put in a situation where you're not sure what you should be doing, like what would be the correct course of action, but then you're afraid of being shamed if you don't do the correct thing, which you don't know.
I don't know if we can ever get rid of the shame we feel because it's part of human nature to be ashamed of a mistake happening. But that's why I think it's important to protect the individual from, being shamed publicly.
Right. So what's the best advice you can give? Like what's the advice you find yourself giving most to your friends and family and whoever?
If something is too good to be true, don't trust it.
Right.
And especially like nowadays, the issue is not that much with email because email filters are getting quite good. But even still, we do get some spam email that somehow ends up coming through. But
it also tends to be better than it used to be because it's been through all those filters.
Yeah,
now by the time it gets to me, it's like super good.
Yeah, but always like what I tell my friends and my family is that if someone is asking you to log in and they are providing you the link to log in, then always like, just think twice before clicking the link and logging in. And also...
But some legitimate companies do that as well.
Yeah, they do. But then if it's like, let's say your bank is asking you to go log in quickly, like go as fast as possible, then you can just type out the URL for the bank yourself. You don't have to click on the email link. And also, I think recently there's been a lot of cases of those text messages with, for example, the postal service is sending a text message or someone... faking to be the postal service is sending a text message asking you to pay X amount of money in taxes or something like that. So you can fake the sender phone number easily so that you always take them with a grain of salt. If it seems to be coming from Posti or the postal service, you can always like take a second to think before committing your credentials anywhere or
Right.
paying anything.
Actually, one of the things I like to do for my friends and family is about credentials specifically. Like I talk about password managers. I even did this little event where I invited my friends over and gave them like a little talk about like this is how passwords get cracked and leaked, and this is why you should have a good password, and this is what makes a good password, and let's all think of a good passphrase right now and register a password manager. And I made everybody in the room like get a password manager and start like I showed them like I had my TV screen display my phone screen and I was showing them like this is how you use the password manager, and I like called them a week later and made sure that everybody started using the password
It's
manager.
kind of like, those Tupperware or, like
Absolutely.
when you used to have those parties, but only regarding like InfoSec.
No, this was more like cult recruitment, but I was like, but I'm a force for good.
Yes.
So we were talking about fooling people and sending them like fake SMSs and fake emails. Do you think a part of the reason people fall for those is that it's hard for a regular person to know what is possible to fake and what isn't? So do people know that like it's trivial to fake the sender of an SMS?
Yeah, I think when you get a text message, you don't think twice. Because if you have a message, previous messages, like legit messages from the postal service, it will come under those. Because it's coming from that same phone number. I just always think that like what you should keep in mind, no matter what kind of medium you're using, like if you're using text message or email or someone is contacting you on Facebook, you should always ask why. Like, why am I getting this? Did I really order something? Do I really have to pay something extra for this? Or am I really that good looking that this handsome guy is now sending messages to me? Just, there are so many scammers out there, and it's so easy to hide behind a fake profile, for example. Or it's so easy to fake the text message. It's so easy to fake, easy if you can go through the email filters, but it's easy to make a phishing site where you can just harvest credentials. So all of these are pretty trivial to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to thank you for making the time to be here with us to talk about InfoSec. This was an awesome conversation.
Thank you so much, Janne, for having me.
That was our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and you can reach us with questions and comments on Twitter through F-Secure with the hashtag Cybersauna. Thanks for listening.